Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Yance. This is part 4. Now let's get into why do you think none of the sequels really work?
Without Cameron, that's a big reason. And you argue Dark Fate, but even I was, I think, kind of a little too hopeful with that. Him coming
Same here.
back.
Same here. I was like, oh, it's gonna be good. And then you talk about this. You mentioned go driving to South Carolina. I took like an Uber ride. I was in Florida at the time, from Fort Lauderdale all the way to the only theater that would had an IMAX. It was like 45 minutes. Spent like $70 just to see that movie.
Uh, yeah, no, and it's because Cameron's not involved, and it's because you can't top what was a you can't top Terminator 2. You just can't. Like, I'm sorry. The only reason, because I'm a big fan of Zero, Terminator Zero,
Yeah,
and the
we're
only
gonna talk about
reason
that.
the only reason that really works is one, it's animated, so it feels like its own thing right there, and it has nothing to do with John, Sarah. It has nothing to do with them, and that's why it works. So the other reason is because the sequels all rely too much on John and Sarah. Way, way too much. Whether it's 3 and they kill off Sarah and it's all about John, or you go to Genesis and they make John the villain, and
Yeah.
it's just, unfortunately, you can't let that stuff die, because I forget who said it. It's show business, not show art. It's all about the money, like, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's really why
Agreed.
we've gotten all these sequels, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. It's unfortunate, but very, very true. So even though Cameron now is working on another film, I'm very, very op non-optimistic. I don't know what I don't know.
Skeptical?
Skeptical. Thank you. I'm very skeptical, and it's sad, but I don't know. Been burned too many
Yeah.
times.
Here's something I'm going to add to that. Here's why I think a lot of the sequels also don't work. They redesigned a lot of the things that did not need to be redesigned. Terminator 3, you see they redesigned the endoskeleton a little bit. It's like it's already perfect. You don't need to change that. They
Right.
redesigned the hunter killer. It doesn't have, when they finally go to the future war and salvation, it doesn't look like the future war. It's monochromatic. It's not those blues that we saw in T2, where it's this all-out war. So it's like they don't understand what was already there. Like, if there's one thing I'd love to ask those people that made those sequels, like, why did you redesign them? Why did
Mm.
you redesign this? Something that already works and is familiar. And I think it's very scary. That tank with the gunners on it, I don't think you need to redesign that.
No, no, of course not. That's a great question. I don't know why. See, with 3, I'm thinking of, like, the endoskeleton,
Mm.
and for the most part, it's really
It
just
looks
not.
not bad.
It doesn't look bad. It's just they went from practical to CGI in that film, and there's a lot of CGI endos, and that just rubs me the wrong way. Um, and then you get into, yeah, Salvation looks totally different, and I think the argument there is because the future has been changed by the actions of the characters. It's not going to look exactly the same, and okay, sure, that makes, I guess,
Yeah.
some semblance of sense.
But then why do the future war? Because that's what everyone wanted to see, was more of what we saw in T2,
Right.
expanded. I mean, they did a video game about it. It's like, you guys can't, I don't know. That to me, it's like little things like that that they don't appreciate and don't understand, that really led to the mindset of not really trying to ever get even close to the Terminator or Terminator 2, because they're like, good enough.
And this is another reason why Cameron is the best, because he does T1, he does T2. He knows he's topped himself, and he knows that he can't go any further than that. T2 3D Battle Across Time, you can't count that. That's, even though it acted as a mini sequel, that was for, all right, here we go. Here comes the beep. It's and giggles, and it was fun. And he directed it. He helped direct the short film, and then he wiped his hands. And then now he's in a really good position, because he literally can have his cake and eat it too, because he can write these things. He's never going to direct them. And if they're good, he'll get credit. And if they're bad, I didn't direct it, so you can't be mad at me, right? So that's why he's the best, because he did,
Plausible deniability.
yeah, he did those two films, and now he'll stay associated to the franchise. He'll never direct again. If he directs a Terminator film, I will literally, my jaw will hit the floor. He'll
Yeah.
never direct another Terminator film, but he will write, he will produce. And in the case of it being great, oh man, James Cameron, you're amazing. In the case of it sucking, well, he didn't direct it, so who are we really mad at, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Denis Villeneuve was the second runner-up for directing Terminator Genesis. That was
really,
the other guy they were thinking about doing. And I'd be like, what would that have been like? Because he would have had to have looked at that and be like, I'm not doing this. I'm
well, yeah, he
not
wouldn't have
doing
done
what
it.
you're
Yeah,
doing this crap.
I don't think he would have done it. No, I don't think he would have done it. So they got the guy that did Thor: The Dark World or whatever.
Yeah. And yeah, I know, but Alan Taylor, he just didn't. I don't know. I don't, because he did good stuff on like Game of Thrones and stuff, and it's like, how do you not do that with this? Just I don't know. See, that's the thing. I just think it comes down to they don't really care about the quality. They just said, let's just do quantity. We want a franchise, but the three after Terminator 3, Salvation, Genesis, Dark Fate never could launch anything. They just never you I can remember being in those theaters and there was never you never felt people excited enough for like, oh, I need more of this.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, no, no, no. I remember seeing Genesis in the theater, and then at the end, after I think it's either mid credit or post credit, but there's a cliffhanger in Genesis where it's this. I think it's the is it the Matt Smith character or something happens where you go into the rubble and
Yeah.
Skynet or Genesis whatever shows up, and then it cuts to black. And I remember the people that hung around to see that. I'm pretty sure it either got a laugh or I know
Yeah.
it got an eye roll from me. So, you know,
Yeah.
and then the only Tim Miller, I would love to talk to Tim Miller
Yeah,
because
he'd be interesting to talk to.
I do think because Dark Fate is not a bad film in and of itself.
Agreed.
It's a bad film because it's associated to Terminator. That's why it's bad. It's not a bad film in and of itself. It's competently put together. It makes
Yeah.
sense. It's not convoluted the way Genesis is. So I do
We're
think
not even explain it in Genesis of like why this is even happening. I
right,
remember reading an interview and they said, well, we're going to explain it later. And it's like, really? It doesn't sound like that. That sounds like a horrible idea. It's like,
yeah,
oh, we'll figure it out later. But sorry about
right.
that.
No, 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 you're good. No, but I do think he sleeps well at night, like going, okay, because he even talked about it when they did the initial kind of press about it. It
Yeah.
was a Hollywood Reporter interview with him and Cameron on a stage. I remember this. And he was like, all right, so look, I'm trying to think of myself as a fan. And if I heard that a sixth Terminator film was coming out, how would that make me feel? And so I was very on board with Tim Miller
Same here.
directing and the way he was talking. And he was talking like the way you and I are talking about how frustrated we are about where the franchise is. So I think he did his absolute best. When you look at Dark Fate, I think there's 5 credited writers. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right there is your problem. You, of
And then you can always pinpoint that in any film. It's like when you
course,
see the five credited
yeah,
writers, you're like, oh, this is a committee
yeah,
coming in and asking questions like, can we add this into the film? We think
yeah.
this will work better with this. I think with Dark Fate, I just don't think it looks too polished to me
That's
to be next to T2 and the Terminator. It doesn't have that gritty feeling. I mean, it also suffers from what a lot of the characters that they come across have no personality and don't really drive you. Like, in T2, you have, Sarah, the guy who licks her face. Everyone wants to see him get it. You got Silberman, you got even the bikers in the bar. They have personality. They're not just no name characters. So we have some kind of emotional reaction to them. Um, when he's out there with he's finally just figured out that he can control the Terminator. He's like, hey, grab this guy, and this is when he tells him, not to kill. They all have some kind of personality. They're not just, and I feel like none of the sequels ever, they just are like, okay, stand in next one, and here we go, and fight, and we're done. And I think that's kind of suffering in those movies is Cameron, he takes these side characters and makes something of them. They're not just nothing. I don't know. That's something I thought about. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever thought of it like that when it comes to the characters, the side, secondary, third, whatever characters.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Personally, it's I guess Cameron just and it's not just Cameron. Also, it's going back to the writers. You know, you look at Cameron's films. It's either him solely writing the films, or he has Avatar changed it. Up until Avatar, it was only either him alone or one other writer.
Yeah.
And so that was either William Wisher or Gail Ann Hurd, I know is credited on the first one. Other than that, once you get to Avatar, and I get why, it's because it's just this expanding thing. So he has to bring in. So I'm not worried with that where you look at Avatar 3 and it has 4 or 5 writers credited. I'm not worried
Yeah.
with that. But usually, yeah. So it's not just him when he writes these really good characters. It could be a William Wisher thing that wrote Silberman really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never really thought of the
Yeah.
boring second, third, fourth characters in these other
There's just
films.
like nothing, memorable about, the stuff, like the girl that the Terminator kills, the first Sarah Connor. I remember her. She doesn't do anything, but there's something about it that's memorable about what they're doing there, where, just like, I mean, probably, Dick Miller's character, who, he's,
Hey,
he's
you
like,
can't do that.
you can't do that. He's like, wrong.
Yeah, it's great.
And there's none of that, I think, in, Bill Paxton's characters or whatever, they're just going to make fun of him or whatever. And it's like, it becomes a scene. There's something there, and I don't see that in any of. I don't know. I just wonder if that's part of why the sequels don't mix. Is it's just like it's carried by either Arnold, or it's carried by Linda and Arnold, or there's nothing like I love Mackenzie Davis as an actress, but I just don't feel like she had enough of like it feels like the Force Awakens of the Terminator, where they're just kind of going, we're going to introduce these new characters and you're going to love them just as much as the previous characters. And it's just like that just doesn't work. It's competently made, but like, why are we doing this? Why get rid of John Connor?
Hmm.
That's what I'd love to ask.
Yeah, and these past two at least films, I think also Salvation was doing this or trying to do this. They all wanted to set up a trilogy of films. I know Genesis was going to do that, and I know Dark Fate was planned on doing that. I think the same thing applies to Salvation, but I'm
They
iffy on
did.
that
They were going to
information.
do that too.
And
They wanted to.
that I never understand why you go into anything like that. Like if I was going in to if I was going to sit down and write a movie, I would sit down and write a movie. I would not attempt to plan for future things when I don't even know if this first one is going to even remotely hit an audience and be successful enough to get me those other films. So why even bother with that? Just focus on the one film, make it as good as you can, and then if it's successful, then you'll get your chance to do your supposed trilogy. But don't, they've always announced it. Oh yeah, like back
Yeah.
to that Hollywood Reporter thing, Cameron said something like, "Oh yeah, like if this is successful, we plan on
Yeah.
doing more of these." So even he has his faults.
Yeah.
endorsing Genesis and literally them sticking his endorsement on the Blu-ray. I just want
Yeah.
to take a Sharpie and scratch it off.
Yeah,
Uh,
where he was in the commercial and he's like, I saw
you're gonna
something
love this movie.
and I just thought, oh wow, I'm like, did you watch this? I mean, you didn't even like the third one, which people actually liked.
And he later said he only said that because he's friends with Arnold. So I don't know which is
Yeah.
worse, the fact that he even said it in the first place or that he retroactively said I lied and it's only because I'm friends with Arnold. I don't know if I was Arnold how that would make me feel either way. It's just like maybe
Yeah.
don't even say anything in the first place, you know? Don't say,
Yeah.
"Oh, down the road I lied because I'm friends with you." Okay. So you lied?
Yeah, so we all went. I know that was like kind of and they tried to do that with Dark Fate after that was. It was like, well, we didn't think it was really gonna work, but we did it anyway. And it's just like, well, why'd you know, I don't know. It's so frustrating. So let's jump to please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.